The scrapyard was a place of silence and shadows. Old ships, broken machines, and piles of metal stretched as far as the eye could see. The air smelled of rust and smoke. Wind whistled through the hollow frames of forgotten engines. It was a place where no one came unless they wanted to disappear. In the middle of this cold graveyard lay a child. She was not human. Her skin had a faint glow, pale silver with faint blue lines running across it like rivers of light. Her large eyes shone in the darkness, wide with fear. She could not move her legs. Her body was paralyzed from the waist down. She had been left there by her own family. Hours earlier, they had carried her on a hover cart, their voices sharp and cruel. "She is useless now," one had said. "She will only bring us shame," another had whispered. "No one will miss her," the last one muttered, and then they tipped the cart, letting her roll into the dirt and broken metal. They did not even look back. The girl's eyes filled with silent tears. She could not run after them. She could not beg them to stay. Her mouth opened, but no sound strong enough came out. Only a weak, broken whimper left her lips. She reached one trembling hand toward the fading shadow of her family, but they were already gone. Now she lay among rusting gears and twisted wires, her body trapped, her heart heavy. She did not understand why love could vanish so quickly. She had been their daughter, their blood, yet in their eyes she had become nothing but a burden. The scrapyard was not empty. Strange creatures lived there, feeding on whatever scraps they could find. Long-legged scavenger beasts with glowing eyes moved silently across the piles. Their sharp teeth clinked against metal as they searched for food. They smelled weakness. They smelled fear. The girl felt their presence before she saw them. Her body froze even more. Her heart pounded fast, but her limbs refused to obey. She could not run. She could not fight. One of the creatures crawled closer. Its claws scratched against the broken steel. Its mouth opened wide, dripping with hunger. The girl closed her eyes, praying for it to end quickly, but something inside her still wanted to live. Her small hand gripped a piece of broken pipe lying nearby. She tried to lift it, but her arms were weak. The pipe slipped, hitting the ground with a dull clang. The sound echoed through the scrapyard, bouncing between the piles of metal. The creatures stopped, their glowing eyes watching her. Slowly they crept closer, drawn by the noise, drawn by her fear. The girl's tears ran freely now. Her breath came in short gasps. She thought of her family again. Did they know what danger they left her in? Did they even care? Or were they glad she would not survive the night? The wind blew harder. The shadows deepened. The scrapyard felt like a giant mouth ready to swallow her whole. But deep in her heart, a small flame of hope refused to die. Somewhere out there, someone must still care. Someone must see her not as trash, but as a living being. She clung to that thought, though the darkness tried to crush it. The night grew colder. Her body shook. She whispered softly, even though no one could hear. "Please, help me." The creatures circled closer. Their claws clicked like knives against stone. One leapt onto a pile above her, its shadow covering her small body. Its growl echoed low and sharp. She pressed her eyes shut. She thought this was the end, and then a sound cut through the scrapyard. Heavy boots stepping on metal. A faint beam of light moving between the piles. The creatures froze, hissing at the brightness. The girl opened her eyes, barely believing it. A figure was moving closer. Tall, broad-shouldered, wrapped in a coat that had seen many battles. His face was half hidden under a hood, but his steps were steady, fearless. In his hand, he carried a small lantern that pushed back the shadows. The human. He had not come for her. He had come searching for parts, for something useful among the trash. But now his light fell upon her small, broken body lying in the dirt. For a long moment, he did not move. His eyes narrowed, trying to understand what he was seeing. A child. Here, alone? The girl met his eyes. For the first time that night, she felt something other than fear. She felt a spark. Hope. The scavenger beasts hissed again, angry at the light. They slithered back into the shadows, waiting for their chance. The human's hand rested on a tool at his side, ready to strike if they attacked. But his gaze never left the girl. She tried to lift her hand toward him, her fingers shaking, weak. It was all she could do. The scrapyard grew silent again. Only the wind, the rust, and the quiet plea of a child abandoned to die. And in that moment, the human knew this was no ordinary night. It was the beginning of something that would change them both forever. The human's name was Elias. He was not a soldier anymore. Not an explorer, not even a traveler. He was simply a wanderer, a man without a home. Years ago, he had fought in a war between humans and the Galactic Council. He had seen cities burn, ships fall from the sky, and families torn apart. He had lost his own family in that war. Since then, he drifted from one broken world to another, collecting scraps, fixing machines, and trying to forget the past. On this night, he had entered the scrapyard looking for spare parts. His small ship was nearly dead and he needed something, anything, to keep it flying. He expected only rust and silence, but what he found was something else entirely: a child. At first, Elias thought his tired mind was tricking him. Who would leave a child here? But the more he looked, the more real she became. A small body half buried in dust, silver skin faintly glowing, eyes too large, too bright for the darkness. She was watching him with fear and hope at the same time. Elias stood still, his lantern casting shadows across her face. He could see the marks of abandonment, the dirt on her clothes, the bruises on her arms, the weakness in her voice. She was paralyzed, he noticed it at once. Her legs lay useless, unmoving, like broken wires. Behind her, the scavenger beasts hissed softly, angry that their prey might be taken away. Elias's hand tightened on the heavy tool he carried. One wrong step and those creatures would leap. But his eyes stayed on the girl. Her hand trembled as she reached toward him, fingers shaking. It was not much, but it was enough. Elias cursed under his breath. This was dangerous. Helping her could mean death. The galactic law punished humans who interfered with alien families. If anyone discovered him with her, he would be executed without trial. His heart told him to walk away. Just turn, take the parts, and leave. That was the safe choice, the smart choice. But then he remembered something. Years ago, during the war, Elias had seen another child, his own daughter, crying for help as fire rained from the skies. He had not reached her in time. She had been lost forever. That memory still haunted his nights. And now here was another child, her eyes wide, begging silently. Could he leave her the same way? No, Elias whispered to himself. His voice was low but firm. He stepped closer. The scavenger beast shrieked, retreating into the piles of metal. They feared the light and the strength in his steps. The girl's lips moved. No words came out, only a broken sound, thin and weak. Elias knelt beside her. Her eyes glistened with tears. Easy, he said softly, though he knew she might not understand his words. I'm not here to hurt you. Her hand brushed against his sleeve. That touch was enough to decide everything. Without another thought, Elias lifted her carefully into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, almost weightless, as if the scrapyard itself had already stolen her strength. She gasped softly, clinging to his coat with her small fingers. He could feel her heart racing against his chest. The scavenger beasts hissed again, but Elias stood tall. He carried the girl through the maze of broken ships, his lantern cutting through the shadows. Each step echoed on the metal floor. As they moved deeper into the scrapyard, Elias found an old shelter, half a ship buried in the dirt. It was broken, but it had walls, and walls meant safety. He stepped inside, laying the girl on a piece of cloth he had carried with him. The girl's eyes followed him, never blinking, as if afraid he might vanish too. Elias knelt again, looking at her more closely. She was no ordinary alien. Her skin glowed faintly like starlight trapped under flesh. The blue lines running through her body pulsed gently like a machine keeping her alive. But she was weak. So very weak, Elias sighed, rubbing his forehead. What am I doing? He muttered. This is madness. If anyone finds us, I'm dead. The girl coughed weakly. Her lips formed one word, barely a whisper. Help. The sound cut through him like a blade. He looked into her eyes. They were not the eyes of a stranger. They were the eyes of someone who had been betrayed, someone who still wanted to live. And Elias knew then that he could not leave her. He found an old water flask in his pack and pressed it gently to her lips. She drank slowly, drops spilling down her chin. For the first time that night, a small light of relief shone in her eyes. Elias leaned back, staring at the rusted ceiling of the shelter. His life had been empty for so long. He had survived wars, loneliness, hunger, but always alone. Now, for the first time in years, he felt a reason to stay. But danger was near. He could still hear faint noises outside the shelter. The scavenger beasts were not gone. They were waiting. watching, and worse, if her family had left her here, they might return. Not to save her, but to erase any evidence. If they found a human protecting her, it would mean death for them both. Elias tightened his grip on the lantern. He looked down at the girl, who was already drifting into a fragile sleep. "I'll keep you safe," he whispered. "Whatever comes." The scrapyard outside groaned under the wind. The stars above were cold and distant. But inside that broken shelter, something new had begun, a bond between a human stray and an abandoned alien child. Neither of them knew it yet, but this night would change the fate of more than just their lives. It would challenge laws, families, and even the galaxy itself, and it had only just begun. The broken shelter creaked in the night wind. Pieces of old metal rattled like weak bones. The scrapyard outside was alive with distant noises, the growls of scavenger beasts, the hum of forgotten machines, the whispers of rust. Inside, the human and the alien child sat together for the first time. Elias had placed her gently on a pile of blankets he had carried from his ship. They were torn and stained, but softer than the cold ground. The girl's silver skin gleamed faintly in the lantern's glow. Her large eyes followed him wherever he moved. She still did not speak. Her lips opened sometimes, but only weak sounds escaped. It was as if her voice had been taken away by the cruelty of the world. Yet her eyes spoke for her, eyes that were filled with questions, fear, and a small light of trust. Elias crouched nearby, repairing an old heater he had pulled from the junk. His hands were skilled, moving with calm precision. Sparks danced, wires hissed, and finally a faint warmth spread through the shelter. The girl let out a tiny sigh. It was the sound of comfort, almost like gratitude. Elias looked at her and gave a small nod. "I don't know if you understand me," he said, his voice steady but soft. "But you're safe here, at least for tonight." The girl blinked slowly as if trying to answer. Her thin hand shifted slightly toward him. Elias stared at her for a long moment. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a piece of dried bread. He broke it, softened it in water, and offered it to her. At first she hesitated, staring at the food with suspicion, but hunger was stronger than fear. She ate slowly, each bite giving her back a little more strength. For Elias, watching her was strange. He had lived alone for so long, moving from place to place like a ghost. He had spoken only to machines, his voice echoing against silence. Now in this ruined shelter, he found himself speaking to a child who could barely reply. Still, it felt right. As the night deepened, the girl's breathing grew steadier. Her eyes closed halfway, but she fought to stay awake, as if afraid he might vanish if she slept. Elias noticed this and sighed. "Rest," he whispered. "I'll be here." Finally, her eyelids closed and she drifted into a fragile sleep. Elias leaned against the wall, staring into the dim lantern light. His thoughts wandered to the past, his wife's smile, his daughter's laughter, the fire that had stolen them both. He clenched his jaw. He had sworn never to feel again, never to carry anyone's weight, and yet here he was, watching over another child. Not his blood, not even human, but abandoned, helpless, and alone, just like he had once been. He rubbed his face and muttered, "Fool, you'll get yourself killed." But when the girl stirred in her sleep and whispered a soft sound, Elias felt something break inside him. He could not walk away. The next morning, pale light filtered through cracks in the metal walls. Elias woke first. He stepped outside, scanning the scrapyard. The beasts were gone for now, but their tracks were fresh. He knew they would return, and he knew the girl's family might too. He returned inside and found her awake. She sat upright, her hands trembling as she tried to lift herself higher. Her eyes met his, and for the first time she gave a faint smile. It was small, fragile, but real. Elias froze, then gave a short laugh. "You're tougher than you look," he said. She tilted her head, not understanding his words but sensing his kindness. Slowly she pointed at herself, tapping her chest weakly. Then she tapped his arm. Her gesture was simple but clear. "You and me." Elias swallowed hard. That one motion said more than words ever could. It was the beginning of a bond built in silence, in trust, in survival. Over the next hours, Elias worked. He searched the scrapyard for tools and parts. He fixed a water purifier, built a small fire, and even shaped a crutch from scrap metal. He showed the girl each thing, speaking softly as if she could understand. She watched with wide eyes, nodding when he pointed, mimicking his gestures. Sometimes she laughed, soft, broken sounds, but enough to make the cold shelter feel alive. The more he gave, the more she trusted. And the more she trusted, the heavier the weight on his heart became. This was dangerous. She was not his child. She belonged to a family that had thrown her away. If they returned, they would not forgive him. And if the galactic law discovered that a human had taken in an alien child, both would be punished. But Elias could not ignore the truth. When she held his hand that evening, her fingers wrapping tightly around his rough skin, Elias understood something. He was no longer just a wanderer. He was no longer just surviving. He had a reason again. Outside, the scrapyard groaned in the wind. Shadows moved in the distance, shapes watching, waiting, but inside, in the faint glow of the lantern, two lost souls had found each other. They did not need words. The bond between them had already begun, and it would only grow stronger. The nights grew colder in the scrapyard. The wind carried dust that bit at the skin, and the sound of creatures always echoed in the dark. Elias and the alien girl had survived together for several days inside the broken shelter. She still could not walk. Every time Elias looked at her legs, lying useless and still, something heavy pulled at his heart. She was full of life in her eyes, but her body betrayed her. He knew that if she stayed this way, she would never survive the world outside. Elias had seen broken machines all his life. Some he could fix, others he could not. Looking at her, he whispered to himself, "She is not a machine. She is more than that. But maybe I can still build her hope." That night, he began his work. The idea Elias searched the scrapyard with careful steps, always alert for beasts. He scavenged through piles of broken armor suits, robotic arms, and forgotten ship engines. His hands picked out gears, wires, and power cells. Most were useless, but some still held sparks of life. When he returned to the shelter, he laid everything on the floor. The girl watched him closely, her eyes wide, curious. She tilted her head when he drew shapes in the dirt with a piece of metal. He sketched legs, mechanical, strong, glowing with energy. She pointed at the drawing, then at herself. Elias gave a small smile. "Yes," he said, "for you." She did not speak, but her fingers touched the sketch gently, as if afraid it might vanish. The first attempts Elias began building. His hands moved quickly, sparks flashing as he welded metal together. He shaped a frame, something that could fit around her waist and legs. It was crude, heavy, and awkward, but it was the beginning of something greater. The girl watched with bright eyes, whispering broken sounds of excitement. When Elias lifted the frame toward her, her face lit with hope. But the first attempt failed. The machine was too heavy. When he strapped it on her, she tried to move, but it dragged her down. She fell forward, and the crash echoed painfully in the small shelter. Her eyes filled with tears. Elias rushed to her side, lifting the machine away. "It's okay," he said softly. "It's only the beginning." She shook her head weakly, as if she was afraid she would never walk. Elias knelt, looking straight into her eyes. "Listen, machines always fail at first. But you keep building. You keep trying. You don't stop until it works. That's the rule." She did not understand every word, but she understood his voice. She nodded slowly. The silent partnership from that night, they worked together. Elias searched the scrapyard each morning for better parts, while the girl stayed hidden inside the shelter. He always returned with something new: lighter gears, smaller wires, smoother joints. At night, she sat beside him, watching his hands move. Sometimes she picked up tools and handed them to him. Sometimes she pointed to a piece of scrap with a questioning look. Elias laughed at her curiosity. "You're learning," he said. Though she could not speak much, her eyes spoke louder than words. Every spark, every sound of welding, every small success made her eyes glow brighter. And Elias, for the first time in years, felt alive again. The breakthrough one evening, after many failures, Elias created a lighter frame. It had small energy cells attached, stolen from the broken remains of an old drone. The machine hummed faintly, alive with power. He looked at her, breathing heavily from the long work. This might be the one. Carefully, he helped her into the frame. The metal locked around her waist and legs with a hiss. The glowing lines of the machine matched the blue lines on her skin, as if they belonged together. Elias stepped back. "Try." The girl looked down at her legs. Her hands trembled. For a moment, fear filled her face. But then she clenched her fists and pushed. One foot moved, slowly. shaking, but it moved. Her eyes widened. Elias's heart leapt. Yes, that's it. Again, she tried again. Another step. The frame supported her, holding her weight. She stumbled, but she did not fall, and then she stood. For the first time since her family abandoned her, the alien girl stood on her own feet, supported by the machine. Tears spilled down her glowing cheeks. She looked at Elias, her lips trembling. He grinned, eyes wet. You're walking. She reached out and hugged him, weak but full of feeling. Elias froze for a second, then held her tightly. The shadows watching, but outside danger grew. Unknown to them, someone had seen the sparks of Elias work in the night. Shadows moved across the scrapyard. The whispers of the girl's family had already begun to spread, rumors that a human had taken their broken child. Inside the shelter, Elias and the girl celebrated her first steps. Hope filled the air, brighter than the lantern's glow. But in the scrapyard beyond, enemies stirred, and the sound of metal feet echoed faintly in the dark. The machines of hope had been born. But so had new dangers. The scrapyard had grown strangely quiet. Too quiet. For many nights, Elias and the alien girl had worked in their hidden shelter. Sparks lit the darkness, tools rang against metal, and slowly her new legs came alive. Each step she took filled her with pride and Elias with relief. But hope always attracts shadows. Unseen eyes had been watching them. Whispers traveled from scavengers to traders and from traders to soldiers. The story was strange, even unbelievable. A human helping a paralyzed alien child. In most places, such a thing was a crime. In the eyes of the girl's people, it was worse than a crime. It was shame, and shame must be erased. The return one evening, as the sky turned red with the dying sun, Elias sensed something was wrong. The air carried footsteps. Not the claws of beasts, not the shuffle of scavengers. These were heavier, sharper, disciplined. He stepped outside, lantern in hand. Across the piles of broken ships, shadows moved. Figures in long cloaks, their faces hard and cold. The girl's family. The same ones who had thrown her into the scrapyard. The girl, now standing inside the shelter with the help of her mechanical frame, froze when she heard their voices. Her eyes widened in terror. She knew them. She remembered the moment they had left her to die. Elias, she whispered, her voice still weak but clearer than before. They came. Elias turned to her. His jaw tightened. He had expected danger from the law, but not this. Not them. The confrontation, the family approached, 4 figures moving as one. Their leader, a tall man with glowing blue veins across his arms, stepped forward. His eyes were like ice. You, he said, pointing at Elias. His voice was sharp, cutting through the air. Human, you took what is not yours. Elias kept his stance firm. I saved her. You left her to die. She was weak, the man snapped. She brought dishonor to us. Her broken body was her fate. You interfere where you are not wanted. Behind him, the others sneered. One woman hissed, you dare keep her alive? Better she had rotted in the dust. The girl trembled, clutching Elias's arm. Her lips shook, but she spoke, her voice trembling. Mother. Father, why? Her words did not soften them. The man's eyes grew colder. You are no daughter of mine. You are nothing. Elias's hand tightened on his tool, his makeshift weapon. He felt anger rise in his chest, stronger than he had felt in years. If she is nothing to you, he growled, then she is mine to protect. The mockery, the family laughed. The sound was bitter, sharp as broken glass. A human? One said. Protect her? Another mocked. She has fallen so low that even trash claims her. The mother spat. The girl's eyes filled with tears. She shook her head weakly. I am not trash, her father sneered. Then prove it, walk. Elias felt her frame tremble. The machine legs were still unstable. She could take steps, but not many, and not for long. He whispered to her, you don't have to. But she looked up at him, then at her family. Her small voice said, I must. The first steps of defiance, slowly she pushed forward. The machine legs whirred, gears clicking as they carried her weight. One step, then another. Her family's mocking laughter turned into silence. She stood tall, shaking but unbroken. You left me, she said, her voice louder now. You called me weak, but I stand because someone cared. She pointed at Elias. He is more family than you ever were. The words hung in the air like a blade. Her father's face twisted in rage. You shame us further with this filth. If you stand with him, then you are no longer one of us. You are our enemy. The threat, the family drew weapons from under their cloaks, blades glowing with energy, sharp enough to cut steel. Elias stepped in front of the girl, holding his tool like a sword. He was outnumbered, but he would not move. Stay behind me, he muttered. The girl shook her head. No, not this time. Her machine frame hummed louder as she locked her hands on the support bars. Her eyes glowed with determination. The family moved closer. The air crackled with the sound of their weapons. For the first time, Elias and the girl stood side by side, not as savior and saved, but as partners ready to face whatever came. The wind howled through the scrapyard, carrying the sound of metal clashing in the distance. The sun disappeared behind jagged wreckage, and night swallowed the sky. The girl's family raised their blades. Elias tightened his grip. The girl's machine legs clicked, ready to move. Her father shouted, "Then die with him!" The scrapyard exploded with light as the first strike came. The scrapyard erupted with noise. The first strike came fast, an energy blade slashing through the air. Elias blocked with his heavy tool, sparks flying as metal screamed against metal. The force pushed him back, but he did not fall. His arms shook, yet his eyes burned with defiance. Behind him, the alien girl tightened her grip on the frame's support bars. The machine hummed, gears clicking as blue light pulsed along her artificial legs. She took a shaky step forward, refusing to hide. Her father sneered. "Pathetic. Even with machines, you stumble like a broken toy." Elias gritted his teeth. "She's stronger than all of you." The battle begins. Two family members rushed Elias at once, blades flashing. He ducked under one strike and swung his tool upward, knocking the weapon aside. The other attacker lunged, slicing his coat, barely missing his chest. Elias rolled across the dirt, grabbed a metal pipe, and threw it. It struck the attacker in the shoulder, forcing him back. The girl stepped forward, her frame whirring. She raised her hands, not with a weapon, but with courage. "Stop!" she cried, her weak voice echoing. For a moment, the attackers hesitated, shocked she could speak at all. Her mother snarled, "You should have stayed silent." She lunged toward the girl. Elias leapt in between, catching the strike on his tool. His arms burned from the impact, but he held firm. "You'll touch her over my dead body," he growled. "Gladly." The woman spat. The first stand. The girl's legs trembled, but she moved. One slow step, then another. The machine adjusted, stabilizing her balance. She grabbed a piece of sharp scrap from the ground. Her small hands shook, but her eyes blazed. Her father laughed cruelly. "You think you can fight us? You can barely stand." She lifted the scrap higher. "I can stand because he gave me hope. That makes me stronger than you." Elias glanced at her, pride flashing in his eyes. "That's it. Don't give them the fear they want." The family circled, their weapons glowing brighter. They wanted to crush both the human and the girl in one brutal strike. Clash of sparks, they attacked together. Elias blocked one, dodged another, and struck back with the heavy tool. His arms bled from cuts, but he refused to fall. The girl swung her scrap piece clumsily, surprising one of her attackers with a strike to the leg. The blade wavered as he stumbled. For the first time, the family looked uncertain. "She should be dead," one hissed. "She's walking," another muttered, eyes wide. The girl took another step, standing tall beside Elias. Her voice shook but carried strength. "You cannot erase me. I am alive." Her frame glowed brighter, matching the veins of light on her skin. Each step grew stronger. The scrapyard echoed with the sound of her mechanical stride. The turning point, Elias fought with fury, blocking blow after blow. He swung his tool hard, knocking one attacker unconscious. Blood dripped from his forehead, but his eyes never wavered. The girl faced her father directly. He raised his blade high, ready to strike her down. She did not flinch. Instead, she stepped forward, machine legs hissing, and looked him in the eye. "You abandoned me," she said, "but I will not abandon myself." Her father's strike came down, only to clash against Elias's tool. Elias had thrown himself in front of her again, sparks exploding as metal met energy. His arms nearly broke under the force, but he roared, pushing back with all his strength. The girl, seizing the moment, swung her scrap piece upward. It struck her father's blade hand. He cried out, dropping the weapon. For the first time, the family leader stumbled. The retreat. The others froze. The sight of their leader disarmed. A human bleeding but still standing, and a once paralyzed girl fighting with fire in her eyes. It broke their confidence. "This is wrong," one muttered, stepping back. "She is cursed," another whispered. "No," Elias growled, raising his tool. "She is chosen to live." The girl stood beside him, her frame glowing. Her father clutched his injured hand, eyes burning with hate. He glared at her and hissed, "You will regret this. You are no child of mine. You are nothing but a mistake." She stared back, her voice steady. "Then I will be my own." With those words, the family pulled back. They retreated into the shadows of the scrapyard, their threats hanging heavy in the air. Their leader's promise lingered, they would return. Aftermath silence returned to the scrapyard. Elias dropped his tool, his chest heaving. Blood ran down his arm, but he was alive. He turned to the girl. She was standing, breathing heavily, her small hand still clutching the scrap weapon. Elias knelt, his voice rough but warm. "You did it. You stood against them." Her eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of fear. They were tears of pride. I fought." Elias placed a hand on her shoulder. "Yes, and you're still standing." The wind howled outside, carrying the echoes of the retreating family. The danger was not gone, it had only grown. But inside the shelter of the scrapyard, something unbreakable had been forged, a bond of fire and steel. The scrapyard was silent again, but silence never lasted long. Elias leaned against a broken engine, wiping the blood from his arms. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Beside him, the alien girl stood, her new legs humming softly with power. She was still trembling, but her eyes shone brighter than the stars above. For the first time, she had stood against her family. For the first time, she had fought for herself. The battle was over, but the war had only begun. The stars above. The night sky stretched wide above the scrapyard. Shattered moons hung like scars across the horizon. Beyond them, the galaxy glittered with countless worlds, countless laws, countless dangers. The girl lifted her face to the stars. She whispered softly, her voice shaky but full of wonder. "Free?" Elias followed her gaze. He had seen those stars as a soldier, a fugitive, and a wanderer. To him, they were both beautiful and cruel. They gave light but also carried endless chains, rules, empires, and wars. He turned to the girl. "Free, yes. But not safe. Not yet." She looked at him, confused. He pointed at the horizon. "They'll be back. Your family. And worse. The law. The galactic law was not like family. It was not emotional, not cruel for the sake of pride. It was cold, efficient, and absolute. Its rule was simple. Species must never mix in forbidden ways. A human protecting, saving, or bonding with an alien child was not seen as kindness. It was seen as corruption, a threat to the order of the galaxy. Rumors traveled fast. A whisper in one scrapyard could reach the ears of enforcers light years away, and already the machines of the law were moving. Elias knew this. He had seen them once before. Metal enforcers with silver masks, voices like thunder, weapons that burned through ships in seconds. No one defied them and lived. He looked at the girl, who was still smiling faintly, proud of her steps. His heart sank. "They'll come for us," he muttered. The moment of peace, but for that night danger was far away. Inside the shelter, Elias lit a small fire. The girl sat beside him, her legs glowing faintly as the frame adjusted itself. She laughed, a small, fragile laugh, when she managed to lift a cup of water without spilling it. Elias couldn't help but smile. It had been years since he had felt warmth in his chest, since he had felt alive. Watching her was like watching a seed grow in the middle of a wasteland. She looked at him and said one word, clear and strong. "Family." The word struck Elias like a blade. He froze, his heart pounding. Slowly he nodded. Yes, family. For her, that word was no longer tied to those who had abandoned her. It was tied to the one who had lifted her from the dust. The alarms, but peace never lasted. In the distance, a sound broke the silence, low at first, then louder. A humming, mechanical and steady. Elias stood instantly, his soldier instincts waking. He stepped outside the shelter, eyes scanning the sky. Red lights blinked on the horizon. Ships. The girl limped out beside him, holding onto the doorway for balance. Her eyes widened as she saw the lights. What is it? Elias' face was grim. The law. The ships grew closer, their engines roaring. Spotlights cut through the scrapyard, sweeping over broken ships and twisted metal. A deep mechanical voice echoed from the sky. "Human Elias, you are charged with violation of galactic code. Surrender the alien child." The girl's hands shook. She looked at Elias in fear. They want me." Elias clenched his fists. "No, they want us both. The choice." The ground shook as the ships descended. Metal doors opened and tall figures marched out. Their armor was silver, their faces hidden by smooth masks. Each carried a weapon glowing with deadly light. The girl clung to Elias's coat. "What do we do?" Elias' eyes scanned the scrapyard. There were no allies, no hiding places strong enough. The law had found them. He took a deep breath. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. "We run, and if we can't run, we fight." The girl's eyes filled with tears. "Fight them?" He looked down at her, his voice fierce. "You stood against your family. Now we stand against the galaxy, the cliffhanger." The enforcers spread out, their voices booming. "Surrender now. Resistance will mean death." The scrapyard glowed red under their lights. The girl's frame buzzed, energy cells flickering as if ready to explode. Elias tightened his grip on his tool, the only weapon he had. The girl took his hand, her voice trembling but strong. "Together," Elias nodded once. "Together." The enforcers raised their weapons. The night filled with the sound of charging energy. And as the first blast of fire lit the darkness, Elias and the girl leapt into the unknown, beyond the scrapyard, beyond family, beyond safety, into a war against the galaxy itself.